I'm here with Jason Adkins. Jason, you're the Executive Director of the Minnesota Catholic Conference. How long have you been in that role?
I've been in that role 12 years. We are the public policy voice of the Catholic Church in Minnesota. So we bring the legislative initiatives and priorities of the Minnesota bishops to the Capitol. We inform legislators about key issues impacting life and human dignity. And then we help mobilize the Catholic faithful to help them be faithful citizens and make their voice heard in the public arena.
You talk about mobilize. So I think having people come to the Capitol, having people getting involved in the process, some people are a little allergic to that. What would you say to them?
Well, it's part of our right and our responsibility as citizens. We have a government of, by, and for the people. And so our elected officials need us as resources to help inform them about what the important issues are and what they should do about key questions impacting life, human dignity, and the common good. So we can't expect our legislators to know everything about every issue, and they rely on citizens, they rely on their constituents to help inform them about what they should do at the Capitol. That's why we have representative government. They are representing us as citizens. You might not agree with them in every instance, but if you want them representing your views, then you need to speak with them about what are those positions that they should hold and how they should vote on key legislative items. So
because I suppose the danger would be that, for example, if you have a legislator and you think they don't agree with you, that person may be living in a bubble. They're not hearing from people like you.
That's exactly right. I mean, we fall into the trap of assuming because someone has an R or a D next to their name that we know what they think about every issue. Legislators are people just like us, and that's why it's important that people go and talk to their legislators at the Capitol in their district, because you learn that they're people, they have concerns. You can't assume how they're going to vote on every issue, and they need your perspective. Legislators come into their role with a few key priorities, and on the rest of the issues, they look to their caucus, they look to their party, but also, most importantly, they look to their constituents, because their constituents are the ones who put them in office. A fun fact is that a legislator, when they get about 5 or 10 messages about an issue, they understand and assume that 50 to 100 people care about that issue in their district. And 50 or 100 people in their district who care about an issue is enough to sway an election. So they're going to be really, really attentive, even if a small vocal group talks to them about a specific thing. So it's very, very important that people show up at the Capitol, that they contact their legislators in their district, they set up meetings on Saturday mornings at McDonald's, whatever. It's important to be in relationship and serve as a resource to our elected officials.
So Jason, people are coming in today and throughout the session to meet with legislators. Tell me a little bit of the logistics. How do you do that?
Well, the easiest way, of course, is to telephone the legislator and talk to his or her legislative assistant and set up a meeting. You can do that here at the Capitol, but you can also do it in the district anytime, and they're more than willing to meet with you. People think, oh, I can't meet with them. They're too busy. They want to meet with you. They expect to meet with you, and they want to hear from you and your perspective. So make a phone call, send an email, try to set up a meeting, but be flexible as well, given the demands on a legislator's time.
So meeting with them in St. Paul, that's incredibly important. But if for far-flung districts, it's important to know that during the rest of the year, those people are probably just a couple miles away and easier to get to potentially.
That's exactly right. And they, like I said, they want to hear from you. Get a group of people together and set up a meeting on a Saturday morning at a coffee shop. Legislators also have town halls and monitor, and when those are, get on your legislator's email list and then show up at those. And that's a great way to ask questions and hear from them about what they're working on as well.
If you have a legislator who is, they or the LA is not getting back to you, what are some tips for trying to grease the wheels?
Well, I mean, coming to the Capitol, understanding where their schedule is when they're in committee, and then showing up at the Capitol, whether they're on the floor or in a committee meeting, you can put in a note, say, hey, I'm a constituent. I'm here to talk with you about a specific issue. Can you give me 5 minutes of your time? And very often they'll come out. So if you really want to speak with them, show up. Again, showing up is what makes all the difference. But then, or sending them a letter or an email just saying, here's my concern. And more often than not, they'll get back to you. Yes, they are busy, but they make time for constituents.
So you've done that successfully. You have the meeting. You're going into their office. What does a successful meeting look like?
Well, I think starting is to recognize that they are a person. Make a human connection. Go in and try to understand who they are. And what's their background. What do they care about? Maybe there's a common interest. Maybe there's a common connection. We're all from small community. So our legislative districts are relatively small, so inevitably someone knows someone. So try to make that human connection. The second thing I'd say is make sure that you have an ask of the legislator. They expect you to ask them to do something. So oftentimes people come into a legislative meeting and they talk about an issue, but they don't actually tell the legislator what to do and what they want them to do. Mm-hmm. So I would just really, really encourage people to come in, make a human connection, say, hey, I'm here to talk about House File 91. I'm hoping you'll vote against House File 91, and here's why. So don't bury the lead, say it right up front, say why you're there, and then make your case. And again, it doesn't have to be, a case that a professor would make. You just have to show up and tell them what you want them to do. That's what they're looking to hear. So make sure you make an ask of the legislator.
Makes sense. So you come in, you make a human connection, you're respectful, and you make a specific ask. Please vote no on this bill. Please vote yes on this bill. What are some other do's and don'ts?
Well, I think first of all, you wait for their response, and then maybe they'll say, yes, I can do that. No, I can't. Okay, well then and you're not always going to agree or you're not always going to disagree. Oftentimes, though, the legislator will say, I'll keep it in mind. Then you make sure you want to follow up with that legislator. Hey, I'm grateful for our conversation. Just checking in to see where you're at with this issue. Here are a few more data points for you to consider. So follow-up is good, but then carry on a regular relationship, because inevitably there are going to be more issues about which you want to speak to your legislator. Carry on a respectful dialogue with that elected official. But again, I'm going back to your point about do's and don'ts. Don't make demands, make appeals. I think that's the number one thing. And then be thankful. Have an attitude of gratitude. They've given you some of their time. They've listened respectfully to you. And be thankful, give them your thanks, and let them know you're praying for them. I think that's really important, because most of the folks who are attending this event are people of faith. Let them know they want and need your prayers, and that's one of the most important things we can do for our elected officials. So let them know that you're there as a resource, that you're there as a friend. We talk about civic friendship, people walking together toward the good, but then also as a resource and an asset to them. Be an asset to your elected officials. That's really, really important.
Excellent. So that speaks to the importance of an event like today's event, United for Life, where hundreds of people from across the state are coming in. And I would think that an in-person meeting with a legislator would be, 5-10 times better than an email?
It makes an impact when a person takes the time to come down to the Capitol to meet with an elected official, especially when you live in the far corners of the state. To make that trip, to be a part of a group of people who care about and are passionate about issues, really makes an impact on legislators. It is the most important way you can contact and be in touch with your legislators. Go visit them in person and have a conversation about issues that matter to you.
I think you're making a great case, but I think people still might be perhaps a little bit intimidated. Do people need to have an expert level of knowledge to come in and talk with their legislators?
So there's a lot of the barriers to participation in politics and public life. People don't know what to say, they don't know when to say it, they don't know how to say it, and they're so concerned about those things. Understandably, it's always best to be informed about an issue so you can make a compelling and cogent case for that issue or for that public policy position. But you don't have to be, and legislators don't expect you to be super informed, super up, not know every nut and bolt about every issue. That's why professional lobbyists exist, to close some of those information gaps. But what's most important is simply showing up. Showing up and sharing your heartfelt position on issues, even if you don't have all the best arguments, that makes all the difference in the world. And that's what they're really looking for, is who's showing up, who cares about this? How many people in my district actually care about that issue? So showing up is the most important thing we can do, even if we don't always have the right thing to say.
Mm-hmm. And talking about what to say, when you have a meeting with a legislator, when you're talking to them, what should your tone be? I mean, respectful, that's easy to say, but what does that look like in your view?
I think a lot of people fall into the trap in these legislative meetings that they demand things as though they're entitled to have the legislator agree with them on every issue. We want the legislator to agree with us, but the better way is to make appeals and not demands. There's an old story about truth, and it's like a precious gem, and when you hold it out in your hand, it's attractive to people, and people take it. But you can take that same gem and you can hurl it at someone, and then it causes pain and pushes people away. So I think that's the big difference here, is we can be armed with truth, and truth is important, but tone matters, and that's a big thing, because the way people receive information is how they want to receive it. And if you're going to be demanding things, if you're going to be disrespectful, people are not going to be able to receive truth as effectively. So there's a lot of folks who have what I call John the Baptist syndrome out there. We have plenty of John the Baptists, but we need to be able to speak truth effectively and with love at the same time. And that's going to be compelling as well, not just having the right principles or the right positions, but tone really makes a big difference.
So I think it's easy for people to lose that perspective when we come to the issues of life and human dignity, especially with the assault on those things that we've seen in Minnesota and in some other states this year. I wonder if you can apply that specifically to the issues we're talking about today, life and human dignity. So you're talking about tone, and I think that's really important with the issue of life, because we've had so many assaults on that issue coming from our legislators this season. So people might be coming to the legislature and they might feel angry. So how do you want people to talk about life and human dignity specifically with their legislators?
Well, we have to start with the right principles, and then we have to speak about them effectively, and then we have to speak about them with the right tone. So we have to passionately demonstrate truth, as the old saying goes. But again, doing it in an effective way, and understand that if I'm feeling angry and passionate about something, most likely the legislator has passionate convictions about these issues too. Everyone's got an opinion about the life issues, but we also have to recognize they're deeply personal questions. People, 70 million abortions, almost 70 million abortions have taken place in this country since Roe v. Wade. It's an issue that's impacted everybody in many ways. Very few people have escaped its impact in some form or another. So we have to recognize that that is a real personal dynamic for people and understand that. And I think the key thing is to remember that we have to start with what I call our primary identities in life, and not view ourselves or our opponents as pro-life or pro-choice, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, Christian, non-Christian. We're all fundamentally children of God. We are children of the one Father, regardless if we're professing Christ or not. And we have to understand ourselves in that light as children of the one Father, but then also our elected officials as children of the one Father, our brothers and sisters, and not just members of the body of Christ, but also potential members of the body of Christ. And so how we speak to them about important issues really, really matters. But we also want to keep in mind that this is a serious issue of moral gravity, and it's therefore all the more important that we go and talk to our elected officials about these key things and make sure that they know that Minnesotans are deeply uncomfortable with making Minnesota a state with abortion on demand.
Minnesota Catholic Conference is one of the main organizers and sponsors of today's event. If people are just hearing about you for the first time, where can they get more information?
We have a plethora of resources that people can use and find on our website. mncatholic.org is the easiest way, mncatholic.org. There we have the Catholic Advocacy Network, where, again, closing that information gap about what to say, when to say, and how to say it. If you sign up for the Catholic Advocacy Network, you can get messages about key issues of legislation, and with a click of the mouse, you can personalize and send those to your elected officials. I know Minnesota Family Council does similar things on a lot of similar issues, but again, being a part of one of those networks is one of the easiest ways to stay involved. That's the lowest level of intensity, we like to say, but it's something. It's more than a lot of people are doing. Of course, the best way is to try to meet with your elected official directly. Handwritten letters are even better than emails as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Jason Adkins, Executive Director, Minnesota Catholic Conference, thank you so much.
Thank you, Moses.